Her wrists bled from the rusted chains. Dust curled around her bare feet as men laughed behind her. A white rancher handed over 5 silver coins. The girl didn't cry. She looked at the sky and whispered, "Mama, I kept my promise." The sun was high and cruel. Dust floated like ash through the auction yard. Flies buzzed. Sweat clung to every man's shirt. Horses shifted nervously behind wooden fences. But no one looked at the girl. She stood barefoot, ankles chained. Her wrists were red where the rope rubbed raw. Her dress was torn, thin, and falling off one shoulder. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just stared forward, eyes dry, lips closed. A hand-painted sign hung from her neck. "Virgin, for sale. Father's debt." The crowd didn't blink. Some laughed. Some watched like it was a game. An old man shouted, $2. Another said, "I'll give 3 and a drink." Someone else added, "Don't look like she'll last long." Then silence. A man stepped forward. Tall, quiet, wore a brown duster coat. A rancher. His boots were worn smooth at the heel. Dust on his hat. Silver around his wrist, not jewelry, but a bullet casing tied with leather. He looked at her. Just once. Then turned his head like he might leave. But he didn't. He asked, "How much?" His voice wasn't loud, but it made the crowd shut up. The seller scratched his chin. 5 silver. She's clean. Ain't ever been touched. Father's orders. The rancher nodded. He pulled a small pouch from his pocket. Dropped 5 coins into the seller's hand. The chains clinked. Someone whispered, "Why him?" Another man laughed. "Maybe he likes his girls quiet." The rancher didn't say a word. He walked toward the girl. Her eyes met his, not with fear, but with something colder. She looked like someone who had already died and just hadn't fallen yet. He reached for the chain at her feet and unlocked it. The rope around her wrists came loose next. She didn't move. Didn't thank him. Just stood there like a statue under the sun. He handed her a canteen of water. "Drink." She stared at it. He added, "Or don't. But we're leaving." She took it, drank once, then gave it back. Her hands shook, but her face didn't change. The crowd parted as he walked through. She followed, still barefoot, still silent. A child in the crowd pointed and said, "She gonna be his now?" His mother pulled him back fast. "Don't talk about them kind of things." They passed the saloon. Men leaned out and grinned. "Hey, mister, you sure she's worth 5? Don't break her on the first night." The rancher didn't stop. Didn't look. Just walked. They reached his horse. He tied a blanket behind the saddle. Turned to her. "You ride?" he asked. She shook her head. He gave her a rope to hold. "Walk then. Stay close." They didn't speak again for a long time. As they moved away from town, the sounds faded. Boots on wood, laughter, men yelling, women calling from windows. The wind picked up. The girl tripped once but didn't ask for help. He didn't offer. By dusk, they reached a hill overlooking the valley. The sky burned orange. Coyotes howled far off. He stopped near a dead tree and made camp. She sat on the dirt, pulled her knees to her chest, and wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. Her feet were bleeding. He gave her jerky. She chewed slowly, staring into the fire like it might bite her. He watched her from across the flames. She looked so still, like a grave that never got a headstone. "Why'd you buy me?" she asked. It was the first thing she said all day. He didn't answer right away. Just threw another log on the fire. "Don't know," he said finally. Didn't like the look on that seller's face. She didn't ask again. Later, when the stars came out, she lay down on the ground and stared at the sky. No pillow. No comfort. Just dirt and silence. He sat against the tree, holding a knife and carving something into wood. Maybe nothing at all. Maybe just to keep his hands busy. She closed her eyes. But before sleep took her, she whispered something soft. "Don't touch me." He heard. Didn't move. "Wasn't planning to," he said. She turned her back to the fire and curled up tight. He watched the flames dance. The logs cracked and fell in. He didn't sleep. And when morning came, she was still there. Still breathing. Still his problem. And he didn't ride away. She was born in spring, in a quiet house between cotton fields and a church bell. Her mother sang while cooking. Her father read the Bible every Sunday. The world felt slow, warm, and clean. They weren't rich, but she never noticed. Her dresses were sewn by hand. Her hair braided every morning. Her name was Ruth. Her mother called her God's gift. Said she came during the storm but never cried. A calm baby. A soft soul. Her brother carved her a wooden horse when she turned 10. She still remembered the smell of the cedar. The way her mother kissed her cheeks after church and said, "Don't let this world harden you." But the world was already cracking. Her father gambled. Quietly at first. Then loudly. First it was chickens. Then land. Then the mule. He borrowed money from white men in town who smiled too easily and drank too fast. He said he would win it all back. He didn't. One night, 2 men came with a ledger and a gun. Her mother cried. Her father begged. They gave him 1 week. He sold the family's things, the good pans, the silver cross, the corn they hadn't even picked yet. But it wasn't enough. On the 7th day, he left without a word. On the 8th, Ruth was taken. They dragged her by the wrist, not hard, just business. She didn't scream. Just kept asking, "Where's my mother?" Nobody answered. They shaved her head in the back room of a saloon. Washed her with freezing water. Cut her old dress off with a knife. Gave her a new one, thinner than paper, meant to show, not cover. They tied a rope around her waist. Wrote a price on her chest. They told her, "Your father paid with you." She still didn't cry. That night, a woman with a broken tooth handed her a slice of bread. Said nothing. Just looked at her like she was already gone. In the dark, Ruth remembered her mother's scarf, blue with yellow flowers. It had been left on the kitchen table the day they took her. She remembered how it smelled like lavender and heat. She kept her eyes closed and imagined the scarf wrapping around her. It didn't help. Each day after, men came to look. Some touched her cheek. Some asked her to smile. She never did. One said, "This one got fire in her eyes." Another spat and said, "Too proud. She'll be trouble." Still, she waited. For someone to come. For someone to stop it. No one did. The town preacher walked by once. Looked at her. Looked away. The teacher who taught her how to ride passed on horseback. Didn't stop. Even her father, she dreamed of him coming, ashamed, begging for her back. But when she woke, it was only the wind. On the 3rd day, they chained her feet. Said she tried to run. But she hadn't. She just stood too far from the post. On the 5th day, they added a sign to her neck, "Virgin. Untouched. 5 silver." She stopped talking after that. One night, the moon was full. She sat near the auction pen. A boy nearby was coughing, chained like her. He asked her name. She didn't answer. He said his name was Jacob. Said his mother gave him a Bible verse to hold in his heart. "Even if I walk through the valley of death." She whispered the rest. "I will fear no evil." He smiled. First smile she saw in days. Then morning came. They took him. She never saw Jacob again. That day she made a choice. She wouldn't cry. Wouldn't beg. Wouldn't pray. She would stay empty. If there was no kindness left, she wouldn't waste herself hoping for it. But that was before the man in the duster coat. Before 5 coins hit a table. Before someone looked at her like she was a person, not a burden, not a debt, not a warning. Now, as they rode through the hills, She watched him out of the corner of her eye. He didn't speak much. He didn't look at her. But he didn't chain her. Didn't hit her. Didn't ask her to smile. At night, she curled up by her own fire. He always made too. Said nothing. Gave her food. That was all. She wondered what kind of man pays 5 silver for a girl and doesn't touch her. A fool. A ghost. A man with a past. He carved into wood by the fire. Always the same motion, same rhythm. She couldn't see what it was. One night, she asked, "What are you making?" He looked at her. The fire cracked. "Grave mocker," he said. "For who?" He didn't answer. She didn't ask again. Later, as the fire died, she looked up at the stars. Something ached in her chest. Not pain. Not fear. Something quieter. A memory. Her mother humming. A carved wooden horse. Lavender and heat. She didn't know what would happen next. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was falling. She was still. Still breathing. Still there. Still Ruth. They rode through the dawn mist without speaking. The rancher led the horse by its reins. Ruth followed on foot, her feet wrapped in a ragged cloth. The ground was cold under her boots. Light crept over the hills like a slow promise. He glanced back once. She met his eyes for a moment, then looked away. The morning felt empty. No bird sang. No wind touched the grass. They carried only 2 saddlebags and a blanket. The rancher had packed jerky and water. He did not offer more. She did not ask. Silence stretched between them as they stepped into the wild. They passed a fallen tree. Its roots pointed skyward like broken fingers. Ruth paused. She touched the bark. It was rough. The rancher waited. She said nothing. She turned and walked on. He did not hurry her. By noon they reached a creek. Water ran clear over smooth stones. Ruth knelt and cupped her hands. She drank. The cold water bit at her tongue. He watched from a distance, sitting on a rock. He tore a piece of jerky and ate it. She looked at him, then pointed to the canteen on his belt. He handed it over. She drank again. Then he took it back. They ate together. He fell silent as she ate. She finished and wiped her mouth. She waited for something to happen. He lit a small fire and boiled water for tea. He poured a cup and slid it to her. She lifted it with both hands and sipped. It tasted like ash. She coughed. He offered her his coat. She wrapped it around her shoulders. Night came early. The sun sank behind distant mountains. Shadows lengthened. He made camp beneath a ridge. He set up a small lean-to of branches. He gave her the blanket. She tied it around her waist. He did not help. They sat by the fire. He carved into a plank with his knife. She watched the chips fall. "Why do you carve that tree?" she asked. He did not look up. "Memory," he said. She stared at her own hands in the firelight. "I have memories too," she said. He stopped carving. He studied her. The fire flickered in his eyes. He nodded once. Then he resumed. Day after day they moved. Ruth learned to ride. He led her horse by the reins at first. Then he let go. She remained steady. He nodded without smiling. She spoke only when necessary. He replied only when asked. They moved across plains and hills. They passed abandoned homesteads. Empty barns leaned against the sky. One had a broken wagon wheel tangled in grass. That night they camped near a meadow of wildflowers. She picked a violet and tucked it in her hair. He did not notice. In the morning, she woke to find a carving by her feet. A small horse in the wood, like the one her brother had carved. She held it softly. She looked for him. He sat by the fire. He watched her examine his work. "Your brother?" he asked quietly. She touched the carving. "He died." He nodded again. "I'm sorry." She brushed ash from the wood. "Thank you." They stood. The fire died. They packed their things. They walked on. A storm came without warning. Clouds rolled in fast. Wind whipped the grass. Rain pelted their faces. He pulled the blanket from her waist and threw it over both of them. They crouched beneath a juniper. Water dripped off the needles and splashed on the ground. He held her close. She closed her eyes. He did not move. He let the storm rage. After the rain, they found a path. It led to a small village. Smoke rose from chimneys. Children played near the well. Ruth hesitated. The rancher gripped her arm. "Stay back," he said. "They will know who you are." She nodded. They walked past the well. A woman looked at them and frowned. Men turned away. A child pointed. They moved faster. The rancher carried her carving. She clutched the blanket. Beyond the village, the sun returned. They reached a hilltop. The wind dried their clothes. Ruth unwrapped the blanket and tied it to her saddle. They rode on. At dusk, they stopped by a river. Fish leapt in the water. She stepped in and washed her face. She gasped at the cold. He knelt beside her and scooped water in his hands. He offered it to her. She drank. He stood and looked at the river. Then he turned to her. "We camp here," he said. "Tomorrow we head east." She nodded. She sat on a stone. She watched him gather wood. She reached into her pocket and touched the carving he had made. She closed her hand around it. The fire burned bright. She sat near it. He sat opposite. They did not speak. She thought about asking him a question about his past, but the words would not come. Instead, she watched sparks rise from the fire. He seemed lost in thought. Finally, she whispered, "Why do you stay?" He looked at her then, his eyes soft. "I saw you," he said. "Needed to know you lived." She pressed her hand to her chest. The night felt less empty. Somewhere far off, an owl called. She smiled for the first time. The carving in her pocket felt heavy and warm. He reached out and placed his hand atop hers. They sat side by side beneath the same sky. Two lost souls forging a fragile bond. Gently smiled. They reached the canyon 3 days later. The rocks rose high and jagged, red like dried blood. The wind howled through the cliffs. A hawk circled above. The rancher led the way, quiet as always. Ruth followed on horseback. She was learning to ride fast. She rarely looked behind her. But that night she did. She saw something strange in the sand. Footprints. Fresh ones. Too many. She stopped her horse. "We're not alone." He looked back, squinting at the prints. His jaw tightened. "They're tracking." "Who?" He didn't answer. He walked ahead, faster now. They found a place to camp hidden between two large boulders. He didn't make a fire that night. Just bread and dried meat. Cold food. No smoke. Ruth chewed slowly. "Do you think they want me?" He nodded once. "Most likely." She looked at the stars. They didn't comfort her tonight. He added, "Could be a buyer. Or someone sent by your father's debtors. Or worse." She didn't ask what worse meant. At dawn, they moved quickly. He made her tie her hair back. He darkened her skin with ash. Told her, "We ride hard today. Stay low in the saddle. Don't stop unless I do." She obeyed. By midday, they reached a ridge overlooking a small valley. Below, a river twisted through trees. On the far side was a broken wagon and a crumbling cabin. The rancher scanned the horizon with narrowed eyes. Then he pointed to the trees. There. Smoke. Someone had lit a fire. They weren't far behind. Ruth's hands gripped the reins tight. "If they catch me." "They won't." "What if they catch you?" He looked at her. "Then you ride." She didn't like that answer. They moved again, deeper into the brush. but the woods here were thick. Twigs cracked under hoof. Branches scratched skin. The wind died. It was too quiet. They crossed a stream and found fresh horse dung. Still warm. The rancher swore under his breath. Closer than I thought. Night fell fast. They stopped only when the horses began to stumble. He hid the animals in a ravine, tied cloth around their mouths to keep them quiet. Then he gave Ruth a pistol. She stared at it. I don't know how. He handed it to her anyway. Point and pull. She tucked it into her belt. They didn't sleep. Just waited. She whispered once, I hear breathing. He nodded. So do I. Then came the whistle. Not from him. From behind them. The rancher stood, gun in hand. A voice called out, smooth and smug. You've got something of ours, friend. He stepped forward into the moonlight. A tall man, clean boots, and too much shine on his belt. A bounty hunter. Behind him were two others. One held a rope. The other a shotgun. The lead man smiled. Girl's property. She's marked. We've got the papers. The rancher didn't move. She's free. She ain't. Her father signed. Church approved it. Ruth stood. He sold me. But I never agreed. The men laughed. That's not how it works, sweetheart. The rancher's voice was calm. Turn around. Leave now. One of the men stepped forward. You gonna shoot us over a runaway? The rancher lifted his gun. He didn't speak again. The first shot hit the rope holder in the chest. He dropped fast. The second man fired, missed. Ruth dove behind a tree. Her hands shook as she grabbed the pistol. The rancher fired again. The shotgun flew from the second man's hands. The last bounty hunter cursed. She ain't worth dying for. But the rancher didn't care. He stepped forward. Ruth raised the pistol. Her finger on the trigger. The lead hunter turned and ran. Silence. Then smoke. The air smelled like ash and sweat. Ruth stood slowly. She looked at the man on the ground. The rope beside him was still coiled. She picked it up, held it for a moment, then threw it into the fire. The rancher sat down, breathing hard. He held his arm. Blood seeped from a scratch. Ruth ran to him. You're hurt. Just grazed. You need rest. Later. She wrapped his arm in cloth. Her hands were steady now. No more shaking. You saved me, she whispered. He looked at her, eyes tired. You saved yourself. They moved again at dawn. No words. No music. Just hoofbeats and birdsong. By afternoon, they reached the ridge again. The fire was gone. So were the tracks. No one followed. They were safe, for now. That night, Ruth sat close to the fire. Her pistol beside her. The rancher slept. She didn't. She watched the stars move across the sky. She whispered, I was always afraid, even when I smiled, even before the auction. The flames answered with a pop. She added, I don't think I'm afraid anymore. He didn't respond. But the wind shifted. And for the first time, she let herself believe maybe she belonged somewhere. Maybe right here. The wind picked up the next morning. It howled across the plains, bending the tall grass. Ruth stood on the edge of a ridge, her arms crossed, the rancher's coat around her shoulders. Below her, the land stretched forever. Behind her, the rancher packed their things. Quiet as always. She didn't turn when she said, You never asked. He stopped moving. Asked what? If I was carrying, she said. He stayed still. Didn't think it was my business. I was, she said softly. Before they tied me up. Before they shaved my head. He finally looked up. The baby. She nodded. I lost it on the second day. Nobody noticed. Not even me. Just blood on my legs and pain that wouldn't leave. He didn't speak. I thought it was punishment, she added. For being sold. For being me. He sat down on the dry earth, facing her. I'm sorry. She looked down at him. That's not all. He waited. My brother, she said. He was one of them. The men who dragged me to the auction. He didn't look at me. Just handed me over and took the coins. The rancher blinked, then looked away. He used to braid my hair when Ma was sick. He carved me a flute. And then, he didn't even speak. She swallowed hard. I was the debt. And he agreed. The wind blew harder. She turned away from the edge and sat across from the rancher. Her hands trembled. She tucked them into the coat sleeves. He stared into the dirt. I buried someone once. She looked at him. He didn't raise his head. A girl. Not much older than you. I found her hurt, alone. Like you. I took her in. But I waited too long to speak for her. Didn't stop the men who came for her. I was afraid. Thought it wasn't my place. They took her. She hung herself a week later. Ruth's breath caught in her chest. I carved her name into a piece of oak, he said. But it didn't help. I kept walking, looking for another moment to do something right. She was quiet a long time. Then she whispered, "Is that why you bought me?" He nodded once. I couldn't watch it happen again. She stared at the horizon. You still see her? Every night. She stood, walked away a few steps, then turned. You lied to me. His brow furrowed. How? You said you didn't care why I was being sold. That it didn't matter. But you already knew, didn't you? He didn't answer. You were in town a day before the auction. I saw you from the back of the cage. You looked. You knew. He looked down again. I thought you were the only one who hadn't looked at me like I was broken, she said. But you already saw all the pieces. I wanted to help, he said. You wanted to fix something. Not someone. She walked to her bedroll and sat. Turned her back to him. He stayed by the fire. His eyes were wet, but he didn't wipe them. Night came. Neither of them spoke. She didn't sleep. Her mind raced. The baby. Her brother. The lie. The loss. The silence between them. In the morning, she wasn't there. The rancher woke to find her blanket folded, the pistol gone, and her footprints leading east. He didn't chase her. He just sat, carved one more name into the plank. Not hers. His own. For the things I failed to say. 2 days passed. He rode slowly now. Not looking for her. Just moving. Until the third morning, when he found smoke in the sky. He followed it. He reached a small chapel on a hill. Burned down. People stood outside, weeping. A man with a rifle shouted. A woman clutched a baby, blood on her face. He saw her, Ruth, standing near the well. A torn dress. Dirt on her hands. Her eyes sharp. She saw him. She walked up slowly. I buried a child today. He looked at her, confused. There was a raid, she said. Bandits. A boy tried to hide under a pew. He didn't make it. She closed her eyes. I stayed. I helped dig. I held a mother while she screamed. He reached for her arm, but she stepped back. I thought running would fix it. But the weight came with me. He nodded. It always does. They stood in silence. Then she said, "If I walk with you again, it's not because I'm broken. It's because I choose to. I know. And if you walk with me, you're not fixing me. We're just walking. Side by side," he said. She held out the pistol. He didn't take it. "It's yours now," he said. She slid it into her belt. "Let's go." They turned toward the hills. The weight didn't leave. But it shifted. They carried it together now. The town of Hollow Bend sat on dry land. No trees. No shade. Just wind and red dust that stuck to your teeth. Ruth rode in beside the rancher, her back straight, her eyes forward. She wore her own dress now, sewn by hand, dyed with indigo. The pistol sat at her hip, plain and earned. They didn't come for rest. They came to end something. The bounty had followed them here. Someone in town had posted a notice, "Colored girl. Stolen property. 5 coins reward." Her face was sketched wrong, mouth open in a scream. She had never screamed. Not once. A boy saw her ride in and ran off yelling. Doors slammed. Eyes stared from cracks. But no one stopped her. The rancher tied his horse near the saloon. He said, "We'll do this fast." Ruth nodded. No fear left in me. They walked toward the sheriff's office. The sun was high, their shadows long. Inside the office, 3 men waited. The sheriff, a preacher, and the man who once owned the auction board, the same man who wrote "Virgin, 5 silver" on her neck sign. He smiled when he saw her. "So you brought her back." The rancher didn't speak. "She's still marked," the preacher said. "There's debt unpaid." "She paid it," Ruth answered. "With blood." The sheriff stood up. "Now listen, girl. Law says if your pa signed your body over, that's a binding." "He's dead," she said. "Buried behind a pig barn. Shot in the throat by a man who tried to take his horse." The room went quiet. She stepped forward. "You call me property. Then listen close. I bled. I lost a child. I was sold. But I never belonged to any of you." The rancher tossed a pouch on the table. It landed with a heavy thud. "Double what was paid," he said. The preacher opened it. "Silver coins. Real. Honest." "Now you've been paid twice," the rancher added. "And I don't want her name on any more paper." The sheriff hesitated. "This ain't how it's done." Ruth stepped forward, pulled a folded page from her pocket. It was torn from a church ledger. "This says I was baptized Ruth Anise Johnson, daughter of Mary and Benjamin. I was born free." She looked the preacher in the eye. "And I'll die free." He looked down. The sheriff cleared his throat. "Then I suggest you ride out and don't come back." "We won't," the rancher said. As they turned, the auction man laughed. "She ain't gonna be much use now, rancher. No man wants a woman who's been passed around." Ruth stopped, turned slowly, walked back to his desk. She placed the silver coin, the one he gave her at the fire weeks ago, down in front of him. "This is what I kept. Not the shame. Not your chains. Just the coin. Just the proof." He looked at it. She leaned closer. "You don't own my story." "I do." Then she turned and left. They rode out without speaking. Dust rose behind them. The town shrank behind the hill. By sundown, they reached a clearing with cottonwood trees. She said, "Here." He looked around. "Why here? Feels like a place that deserves something honest." He helped her gather stones. They built a marker. She carved it with his knife. The letters weren't straight, but they were real. It read, "To the girl who died so I could live." She laid the wooden horse beside it. Then they sat in the grass, facing the sky. He broke the silence first. "You ever wonder what comes next?" She smiled faintly. "No. I just hope it's quiet." He nodded. That would be enough. They didn't need to say more. 2 years passed. She stayed. Not as a servant. Not as a wife. Just as herself. She worked the land. Raised goats. Planted beans. Wrote her name on every gate. People whispered about the girl who once wore chains and now carried a rifle. Some said she was cursed. Others said she was chosen. She didn't correct them. Sometimes, girls would come to her. Quiet ones. Hurt ones. She never turned them away. She'd give them food, a name to use, a place to sleep. One day, a child asked, "Are you his daughter?" Ruth smiled. "No. But he's the man who made sure I lived." The child asked, "So who are you?" Ruth looked out at the hills, then back at the child. "I'm Ruth," she said. "That's enough." That night, She left something by the fire. His old coat. Folded. Inside the pocket, the same coin. And beside it, a single flower. Lavender. He never touched it. But he kept it always.